Senator Rob Portman, Ohio Republican, and Senate Finance Committee. Senator, the congressman has a very good point here. You could talk about making this a little less pricey by taking the time frame from, let's say, 10 years to 5 years or what have you, knowing full well that you'll get your way, because it is very unlikely once government programs and initiatives start that they never stop. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's absolutely true, and I appreciate Jim Clyburn, and I appreciate his candor, frankly, but that's exactly what I fear. People say that it's $3.5 trillion. Actually, it's more than that, the tax and spend bill, because it doesn't include programs that both start later, like the Medicare program for dental, as an example, doesn't start for several years, but then it will continue indefinitely, or other programs that start and then stop, but as you say, will be almost impossible not to continue. Once people start getting these benefits, the experience has been in our country that you continue to get them. And as you know, it's those mandatory spending programs, entitlement programs that are causing us the fiscal crisis that we're in. So, yeah, I mean, it's candid for him to say that. That's the problem with the 3.5. It's really more like 5 trillion when you look at it that way. Yeah. And we just can't afford it at a time when we have $30 trillion in debt. And by the way, coupled with that, Neil, is also the big tax increases, which really slam our economy right now.
But if it's a smaller package, Senator, if it's a smaller package, it means that presumably the tax hikes to pay for it might be smaller. Do you think that's the case?
Well, yeah, but that means they wouldn't even pay for it, because these are going to be programs that will continue. The 10 years a convention we use. That's right. The way it will be scored by the Congressional Budget Office, is in a 10-year time frame. So if you say a program is only going to last 5 years...
Has the CBO ever gotten it right on a 10-year anything? I mean, I don't know what I'm going to have, for breakfast 10 hours from now. So leaving that aside, I'm just curious on the debt ceiling.
I agree with you on CBO, but we got to have some kind of...
on the debt ceiling thing, this is what confuses me, that Mitch McConnell is offering this sort of way to move forward. And some said that maybe after talking to market and business types, he was concerned enough to essentially blink. Do you think Mitch McConnell blinked?
No, what I think Mitch McConnell said is consistent with what he said all along, which is we are not going to default, and we must not default, and we won't, and we haven't in the past.
No, but he also said, Senator, he would never help out in this process. Democrats have to fix this on their own. Now they're not on their own.
I think ultimately the proposals that he's making do require Democrats to provide the 50 votes plus one, plus the vice president breaking the tie. So even though Republicans would allow Democrats to get onto that kind of a bill, the actual debt limit votes would be provided by Democrats and any Republicans that were interested, but I don't think any are, because the increase in the debt, as you know, is driven by two things. One, the $1.9 trillion package at the beginning of this year, March of this year, where no Republican was included on purpose. They did it under reconciliation, sought no Republican support, and didn't receive any. And that was, for COVID, but more than half of it did not go to COVID. It went for other priorities, including social spending. And now this big, huge new package we've been talking about, the so-called 3.5 or $5 trillion package, that's a lot of new spending programs that will be in place for probably forever. So this is why Republicans are saying, we're okay to let you get to the debt ceiling, have the vote on the debt ceiling, and Democrats will likely provide the votes.
All right, we might dodge a bullet if all this comes to pass and the government shutdown doesn't happen, or worse, a default where we don't make payments to bondholders or Social Security recipients.
We can't let that happen, and we won't.
That seems to be the change here. And I don't know whether it was the meeting with business and other financial types or the calls that Republican leaders have gotten, yourself included, that whatever would happen and whoever is pointing the finger, everyone will be raising a finger at you guys if that were to happen. Was that the impetus for this sudden sort of olive branch to Democrats to avoid all of it?
Well, I think we always knew that toward the end we were going to have to figure out a way forward. And it's interesting you mentioned, people being blamed. When you look at the polling data, which I saw today, most Americans actually blame the Democrats. Now, I'm not saying that's a reason for us to do or to not to do anything on the debt limit. We should not default. We will not default. We've never defaulted. But I don't think it's true that Republicans were feeling a lot of pressure. I think it was more, frankly, that Democrats were feeling some pressure, and now we're going to figure out a way forward. And that's very positive. It may not be for as long a time period as the Democrats initially wanted, but it will be, I think, for a period of time to get us beyond this immediate crisis, get us into, I hope, early next year, and the opportunity for us to, get this economy back on track. But let's not do the big tax and spending bill, which would have just the opposite effect.
It looks like that's going to happen, though.
Well, we might get something, but I don't think it's going to be close to the 3.5, or certainly not the 5 that were talked about a moment ago. It looks like something might happen. I hope it doesn't, because I think it's a terrible time to do it for our economy. We just spent a whole bunch of money earlier this year, in March of this year, on some of the same programs. And you know, to raise taxes right now for small business owners, as an example, Neil, you're seeing about a 40 or 50% tax increase for successful small businesses that would have because they're paying their taxes as individuals, and everything goes up, including a small business surcharge, not having the 20% deduction. And then also,
no, you're right, Senator. A lot of that is still iffy. They got to work out the details. That's far from a given. We'll watch how it all sorts out. But Senator, I do want to thank you very, very much. We are monitoring the Denver Saki right now.